Yeah, those changes, AI didn't make that easier. It was always garbage in, garbage out. And before it was our applications reasoning on that data, and now it's the AI using the same data. So it's still, data is still key here. So of course we're facing a lot of challenges to make that data as best as we can, or as good as we can have it. Because the data will determine if the AI will be successful in actually adding value to your applications or workloads.
Hey there, welcome to Better Talks, the podcast.
I am Rick.
And I am Oscar. And today we are joined by Roelant Dieben, who is a cloud and AI architect at Sopra Steria. Welcome, Roelant.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's so great to have you. I mean, we run into each other from time to time in the community, right? And then you're actually very active in the community by organizing events and helping there. So what drives you to be so active in the .NET community in the Netherlands, or maybe even software development community?
Well, yeah, the community itself, of course. And I just love working with all those amazing individuals in this community and sharing knowledge, because I think in our field, in what we do, knowledge is key. So I'm always looking for knowledge and finding out the next best things, or what I think will be the next best things. And I love sharing these, and I love giving people a platform to share knowledge themselves.
And that's actually a good point that you have there. The next big thing, right? You know, this question was going to be the next one. What do you think will be the next big thing?
Yeah, to me, we're in the middle of the next best thing or big thing. AI is, of course, not a new thing anymore. Has been here for years, but is now giving us so much hooks and so much handles just to use it in our applications, in what we do, to be more productive. It is crazy how fast it's going.
And then you actually have a role that says a cloud and AI architect, and you currently work at Sopra Steria. What is it that you do on a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis, I help clients make sense of, on the one hand, cloud, because cloud has been here for, of course, even longer. But there are still very basic challenges these customers face. So I help them make sense on that. And then the next question comes, what are we going to do with AI? So I love helping them there as well. AI to me is something I have been doing, if you can call it, for a very long time, but has become actionable only just a couple of years ago. And it was, I think, to me, it was Microsoft coming out with cognitive services. You could just use as an API and just have all these amazing things I could never do myself in my applications. And that means I'm old, because I've been here quite a long time. I started with BASIC in the very early days. And I always had dreams of being able to do facial recognition and to do voice recognition and have my application speak. And of course, never was able to do so. And now comes this amazing piece of technology that makes it very, very easy to use.
I mean, in between the lines, he just called us old, right? Because I think we're roughly from the same generation.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
No, thanks, but that's
but we do that
true.
Weekly, right?
Yes. We just don't want to be old man yells at cloud, right? Those guys. But well, I actually think that what you're saying about AI is completely true, and I think not a lot of people actually saw what cognitive services, for instance, could do at the time. There was a couple of customers that were actively working with it, but I mean, AI has taken a big flight now. And one of the things that we run into whenever we try and help customers try building AI services, especially building AI services on top of their own data domain, is the fact that it's really hard to get decent data in place for the AI to work with. Is that something that you run into in your line of work as well?
Of course, yeah, those changes, AI didn't make that easier. It was always garbage in, garbage out. And before it was our applications reasoning on that data, and now it's the AI using the same data. So it's still, data is still key here. So of course we're facing a lot of challenges to make that data as best as we can, or as good as we can have it. Because the data will determine if the AI will be successful in actually adding value to your applications or workloads.
Yeah, and I think I jumped the gun a bit there, because the first big challenge probably with using AI is coming up with a decent use case. I mean, so many use cases that customers think of initially don't necessarily need AI to be solved.
It's a whole new class of problems it can solve, right?
Yeah.
So what you said, Roelant, like it became actionable, especially with cognitive services as well. Like it's basically an API now.
Yep.
And we got a serious hype cycle going on. But I'm seeing the combination now of some good ideas that aren't just a wrapped chat client, and some common proper engineering and doing things like vector search and like just piling everything up to solve cases we couldn't really solve yet. And then you get into a whole new world of lovely puzzles to solve side effects. And we need people around that know this stuff a bit longer to explain some of the sharp edges and to say what you can do about it. Because like there are so many nuances that can occur if you're trying to come up with a solution for something that causes a side effect, especially if you're doing a decision-making process somewhere. Like you really want to prevent some things if you want to ensure quality. But I think we're now really at the point where the hype is cooling down a bit. Everything becomes faster and more performant. It becomes more affordable. So I think this is the best time to actually start jumping on it if you didn't do it yet, because you can really basically solve every problem you can think of in that realm, of course.
Yeah, true. But you're also very right that some problems are not really suitable to be fixed by AI, and that is what some customers are now trying to do to get extra budget just to put some AI in it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to slow them down and say, well, we have better solutions for this. And yeah, it is interesting.
Interesting to say the least. True.
Yeah.
You just triggered me. I've lost my train there.
Okay, no, but like I've indeed, like if you see at the like I did a project now. It's now on private or public preview, so it's processing some data, and it's pretty awesome. But the weird side effects, how did we fix them? Some good old-fashioned regex. The good thing about it is that regex was halfly written by Copilot, so basically it also saved me there. So it's such a bouquet of solutions you're now like plowing together to get to a proper use case. And I'm starting to see real benefits, while I was really AI tired at some point.
Yeah, well, I found my train back. What I actually want to say is, so when AI first got that big hype, it was really you going there to get help and then getting the answer and trying to fix or incorporate that in your software or whatever. And then even when the initial versions of Copilot were available within Visual Studio, it was you explicitly opening up GitHub chat or whatever to talk to the Copilot and get an answer. Now, when I'm in Visual Studio and I'm just working, it automatically fills in code and says, I think you might need this. Is that true? And I think that's where the actual value comes, when it's no longer something you explicitly need to go to get an answer, but when it helps you along the way. And I think that's what we are seeing now with, for instance, GitHub Copilot in Visual Studio, but also with Copilot in M365. And I've even seen customers that have done similar things in their products, where if somebody describes a problem, they already ask the questions. They know the maintenance guy or girl will ask as follow-up questions, just to get a complete as possible report for the person that actually is going to fix the issue. So I think that's actually the next wave of AI, or at least the usage of AI. Do you already have customers that are at that level of building and using their own AI services, Roelant, or are we not there yet for, let's say, quote unquote, normal companies?
Well, I think all companies are now trying to make sense. And what I see a lot is companies that have already started with, and of course, because all employees are seeing this amazing technology and are trying to get on board, because everyone shares their success stories on how productive they are now using AI. And what companies are now seeing, I think, is all of the employees started and almost no governance, or it's hard to keep track of what everyone is doing. So to me, the first stage is always to get everyone on the same platform, have them using a paid license, so no intellectual property is lost there, because of course there are risks in using all these publicly available AI solutions to solve your commercial and corporate problems, because it's very easy to have data leaks there.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, that's one of the things, like, I've seen in customers as well, and then like customers of our product, seeing some fear or some questions, like, can you turn this feature off if we open like a product, because they're afraid of AI, because it might leak data, and I'm trying to address this now. I'm trying to probably this week write something out also, that the fear is like, it can be a few things. It's like, if you have it in a process, of course, that makes decisions for you, that it guides you in the wrong path. Well, that's true. Like, and I think it's a lot of UX in your product needing to prevent those kinds of scenarios. But I think most of the fear is based on training and data leakage. While if you're using a paid license for anything, you hook up to an API, like, you're using the model, you're not retraining it, and I think that's hard to grasp for well, let's say normal people that want to use your product. Yeah. How do you go into a conversation like that? Have you them yet, Roelant?
Well, it's an interesting point because that is what a lot of people think, that the system is constantly learning, and therefore your data is leaked. But of course, you have a very good point. That is, the data is just part of some data set now. If that is in the terms and conditions of that API you're using. And I'm not losing my train of thought also, but this, yeah, there are some, I think, at first training the customers, sharing that knowledge about what is actually happening, and share information about the misinformation that is out there. That helps people just to get a grasp of it and not to fear it, because of course that is the other part of corporate that I see a lot, that is just turning off everything that just has to do with AI, and that I think in the long term will really hinder you to stay competitive, because yeah, there's so much value to be added using AI.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance, because, like, especially a year ago when everyone, including Samsung, was putting their questions in the open.
Yeah, a very good example. Yeah,
like we told, like, don't do that because we will leak data that way. Don't use it. Don't use it. And then at some point, the real, like, enterprisey stuff came out, and like, once you're paying for it, then you know you're not the product anymore, or you can assume most of the time. But then the terms and conditions apply, and that is just compute. But it's hard to train users saying one thing in pure panic at one moment, because everyone can screw up at so many levels, and then, like, almost a year later saying, no, you can just use this. Why are you worrying? Like, it's hard to navigate that, and I can only imagine if you're not a technical person, and you grew up with movies about AI, it's like what to do.
Yeah, but I can also imagine. I mean, normally, services take a lot more time to evolve. I mean, this is in a time span of what, a year and a half, 2 years? We went from the well-known Will Smith eating spaghetti video to actual good-looking, almost not distinguishable videos generated by AI. And we talked about this earlier. We had that person on LinkedIn that actually had a sixth finger on his hand. He 3D printed the sixth finger.
That was funny.
So he said, I can always claim it was AI. That's not true anymore already. So I can also imagine that for end users, it's hard to keep up with the pace at which AI is evolving.
Stronger than ever almost. Cloud went fast at some point, but and of course this is years of work, and this is theory from decades ago. But at some point, the compute unlocked the special sauce, and someone with a big budget, based on the global AI term, made it happen by putting a lot of data in there, and we crossed the gap, and then like you can prove it, and then it's just scaling, and I think we're still scaling a lot.
Oh yes,
but that's not the end architecture, of course, just more compute, because it's not sustainable at all.
Well, talking about that, Roelant, I'm actually really curious to hear your thought about this. ChatGPT and the different models it has is very well known, and it gets a lot of attention and a lot of traction. But I kind of look at it like a Swiss Army knife. It can do almost anything and everything.
Yeah.
So if you go into the woods and you have your Swiss Army knife with you, and you need to saw a branch off a tree, hey, there's a little saw on this Swiss Army knife.
Not the best saw.
But if you know that the only thing you're going to be doing is sawing branches off of trees, then don't bring a Swiss Army knife, but bring a saw, right? So then you go into a small language model or an SLM. Is that a discussion that's already happening with customers?
Yeah, that's at least something I always try to have customers do, because you raise a very good point. Those huge models, those really large language models, in fact, can do too much, because I love the analogy of the saw in the woods, but it's worse, because imagine you have a Swiss Army knife with you that also understands nuclear fusion, and but also can have the best recipe for your apple pie, or have advice on some mortgage situation you perhaps have in this local Netherlands setup that you're facing. And yeah, that is, of course, there is no scenario that you need all of these things. So I always try to have customers realize that often you're better off using smaller language models. And smaller language models, fine-tuning is always a thing. To me, it makes no sense, fine-tuning large language models, because if you do that, then in a couple of months' time, the big companies, whether that will be Google or OpenAI, will have a better model that is a lot better than your fine-tuned large language models, which is just too expensive. But these smaller language models, well, then fine-tuning is totally acceptable. You can make it more your model. It doesn't cost that much money. It's very easy to do in Azure. You use a lot less compute, because that is something, of course, we do have to realize. Using these large language models does have a price, and it's not only the money we're paying for the credits, but also what we're using in power consumption, because that is astronomical what it is now.
Yeah, clouds were becoming very efficient until they were not.
Until they were overused. Yeah,
racks of NVIDIA came in. Indeed.
Yeah,
it's definitely a discussion at the moment. I don't know. I saw the Microsoft also opened up a lease for the 8 Mile Island nuclear reactor to open that again. It's like we're going a bit back in time. I'm curious what they're going to do. Not only Microsoft, but all the neutral goals they had for 2030 or something.
They're
carbon
saying
negative, right?
Yeah, they're saying that that they still have ambition to get there.
I would word it like that.
That's why they're looking into nuclear power, right?
Yeah, that's carbon neutral. So is this actually one of the things that you discuss in your talk, the dark side of AI, or does that go in a completely different direction?
Well, that is an older talk, and the dark side of AI is on what didn't go well with AI up to a couple of years ago. But it was a different time because then that was big companies building models, and it was a lot of decision models, and all these famous examples popped up, like Amazon with their job interview model that highly favored male candidates over female candidates because the data was just biased. So the dark side of AI is really about bias in data sets, and unfortunately, we haven't solved that problem yet, and it will take a long time before we're there. But I think in sense of responsible AI, and especially the bigger companies like Microsoft and Google and Facebook are doing an excellent job for responsible AI. So they're really trying to make AI as fair as possible, but I think it's a long way to go.
Yeah, and it's to quote a company, "Don't be evil" statement is very true in that, right? Because not only responsible AI as far as diversity inclusion, that those types of things go, but also let's make sure that we use it for good, because you could also open up a lot of negative things using AI probably.
I think that is it. AI, I think, is always also being used for not so good purposes. I think the hacking community is very well off using AI because they're even more productive than before. So that almost forces us to use AI as well on the good side. So yeah, I'm very thankful and that the big companies are focusing there, but unfortunately there are actors in this world that don't care and will just use it for wrong things.
Yeah. And the thing that changed there, because it's always like an arms race, right? It's like with hackers or bad actors. But normally you would have the benefit of time between finding something, exploiting it, building something in the wild, and defending on it. I think that became a lot shorter because of these things. You see a lot. You can do a lot more. You can do a lot more guessing, brute forcing of exploits, and it's so much harder to defend to it. If next day the thing is basically proof of concept because an AI just spent some compute on it. I think that will change that landscape a bit, and I definitely think the good guys need a lot of these tools and need to invest into creating better models to defend and to act. But it's going to be a different world, a whole new puzzle. It's always fun for people like us, right?
No, it is. But building on that a bit, I mean, people like us, developers or people who work in the software industry, how do you see the future for people who work as coders right now or work as developers right now? Because a lot of fear maybe was, oh, we're going to lose our job. And then, of course, we have all those funny images that says, well, for us to lose our job to AI for software development, a customer needs to clearly state what they want. So we're good.
Writing specifications. Oh, that's code.
But okay, to get back to the question, what do you think would be the impact for us in the future?
The impact, I think, and almost hope it will be huge. And I think we have some pivotal moments in history, and that is those changes took a lot longer. So if you look at the steam engines and electricity and so on, the adoption was a lot slower. So with AI, how easy it is to use, because a couple of years ago, of course, it was able to being used by the general public, not only developers, not only technical people. It was everyone, really democratizing the technology for the entire population. So I think a lot of jobs will change. I don't think there will be less jobs, but I think the contents of your job could probably change. But for the foreseeable, for the next couple of years, well, demand will probably still be higher than the number of people actually in those jobs. So I don't think for the next couple of years, you would really have to be scared for your job. But it will most definitely change the contents of what you do on a day-to-day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen that comic where you see the developer working for 2 hours and then debugging for 2 hours. And then the next step is the AI writing it in 5 minutes, and then the developer debugging for like 10 hours because he just doesn't understand what's happening. No, but in the end, what I think you're saying is we're still going to need people who understand how all of this works, right? And how to make use of all of these additions that we have. And for instance, prompt engineering is going to be added, or has been added, as a role that nobody could have thought of like 5 years ago.
Even though I don't think it's a full-time job.
Nope. Well,
no,
maybe in some places.
I think
it's
a lot
part
of people,
of your developer
toolkit, right?
Toolkit.
Yeah, I think some people really jumped on it, especially public, that were also selling Web3 and crypto, and are now as like, I'm a prompt engineer with 2 weeks of experience.
That's more than no.
There's always a lot of people like that, but I think you do need to understand how it works and get your skills up to speed. But to be a guru on that, it's like I don't think anyone really understands what's happening enough to do that. You have good practice, of course, and that should be in your toolkit as a developer. And I think you won't be replaced by AI as a developer, but you will be replaced by a developer that uses AI if you're not. So I think it's an extension, and it's if used correctly, it's a great Swiss Army knife, right?
True.
And that is what it is, because of course we always try to make it seem intelligent, and marketing, of course, has done a really great job to make all these large language models seem very intelligent. Mm-hmm. But in the end, it's just math and it's just statistics. And if you look under the hood, there is really no intelligence there. So it's perceived intelligence. And I really hope I'm correct here, because also in a couple of years when robots will take over, I will have something to explain. But for now, what is out there now as AI is not general AI. It's not really that intelligent. Mm-hmm. And it's almost in some ways scary as how intelligent we think it is. That is that's sometimes funny to see.
Yeah. Like we treat it as a person, as because it reacts like that. But I think we should, just in case, say please.
And thank you.
And hi.
But I don't think the LLM will evolve into general AI, right? Like it's one-dimensional. Well, no, it's actually very multiple dimensional, but
it's highly dimensional.
Highly dimensional. No, but it's a straightforward model of math, finding equal correlated other vectors in there. Like the more I dove into the science behind it, the more I started to trust it again. It's like, oh, this is just some math, and I'll call the API. It's fine. Before that, I was like, what is this magic box of? Why am I chatting to an API? Why is there not a proper query language on it? It's like I was really confused in the beginning.
Where's the UI? Where's the button I push?
Where's the spec? No, but like the more you dive into it, and you see indeed, at least a simplified explanation of the vectors and the dimensions, how it works, then you will also see where the place of it will be in your stack, and where you definitely should avoid it, because it makes no sense at all. And I was this week at Techrama, and were at some talks of some people that also went into it a bit deeper, and it was good to see people with years of experience and maybe actually studied AI to explain where this model is. And I have the feeling like everyone who knows more about it will talk lighter about it, like what this place is.
Yeah, until the next time you're using it and Visual Studio pops up with this amazing class that you wanted to write, but didn't know you want to write, and then you're just blown away again. Yeah.
Sometimes I'm really having that moment that I'm like, is it now really reading my thoughts? Like, how does it think of opening this class with this name indeed, or this method? It's probably the next logical thing to do. But I was surprised this week. I actually, it predicted one of the bugs I would write because it wrote it for me. I had two kind of similarly named clients for different entities, were table clients in one class. And I opened one, I added a field, and I saved it back. But it saved it through the other client. So the actual record went to another table because it just it completed all my text. And like, yeah, looks good. I was like, there's something odd here. Like it just jumped tables. It was really, really tricky. I could write a bug like that. Like that's one of those things. Like they started with the same letter. And it's like kind of an autocomplete bug, but it fully wrote it for me. We're 10 lines of code, and the last one was incorrect.
But then you wrote your test right using AI, and then you found out.
Using AI and said was great.
Okay.
This is exactly what I generated 5 minutes ago. So
let's go to TDD and do it there. Do it wrong there. Yeah. No, you need to pay attention. You still need to test. You still need to test with a different perspective. And also in those solutions, right? So if you're letting the AI do something, like you should confirm. You should. Well, we have the filters in at least Azure OpenAI that helps you a lot. That there's nothing really bad coming out. We need those guardrails because it's really unpredictable, and also the testing. Like, are we? Like I switched models last time because there was a cheaper one again. Like, how do you regression test this stuff? Because it's not 100% the same thing, and you cannot do full snapshot testing. You need a set. So we're really building at that now. Do you see that at customers, Roelant? Like how to do full regression testing on this?
Yeah, I think everyone would like to, but it's just, and then you come back to the math. It's just a probability you're getting something. And you can make it very deterministic. These models can be just very not creative if you want them to be. But regression testing, of course, that is then, and especially when you're switching models, that is hard, and it's just not an easy problem to solve. So also in your tests, you have to have some bandwidth in what you find acceptable, and that is very hard to determine because you have to come up with numbers which is acceptable, and in some cases that is almost impossible.
Yeah. So we're going to need to infuse AI into our tests to look at the results of what we got from the model to determine if the general idea of the answer is what we expected it to be roughly, right?
Well, that is an option, and you see that a lot. Just models scoring models. Yeah.
It's also like, how important is it, right? Like the decision. Like, are you I don't know, are you a bank? Are you an insurance company? Are you some safety system? You cannot just plug it everywhere, no. and you might be able to give a lot of advantage. But I think if you're building something, you should also look at what you should always do with building software. It's like, if this goes wrong, what's the impact? How can it go wrong? Do a proper analysis on it. And just imagine the incident you're in afterwards and the cleanup you need to do. And like, if you cannot, if you upfront you're like, I never want this to happen. Like, you should avoid that problem. If it's just like indeed, I don't know, I cannot think of anything that I couldn't think of going completely wrong at the moment because I see horror in everything, basically.
Well, then do you know what maybe it might be a good time for now?
For a totally random question.
It's a good time for a totally random question.
Always. Okay, Roelant. What's the best way to waste time?
The best way to waste time? For me, or in general?
No, for you.
For me, it's playing computer games.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What games?
Well, I play a lot of Dead by Daylight, and I'm not proud of it. because that community is, if you talk about communities, that community is extremely toxic, but it's such a fun game.
I don't know it even.
You explicitly said computer games. Is that, do you play console? Do you play on a machine or on a PC? What do you play on?
Yeah, again, I'm old, so I play on the PC most of the time. But yeah, there is a PlayStation somewhere, and if my son is not using it, then sometimes I play there as well. Yeah.
So that's 2 times a year, probably.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and of course, not only computer games, board games as well. So that is, we have this huge cabinet of board games. So.
Cool.
Nice. So switching gears a little bit, we talked a lot about AI, and we already touched briefly upon cloud in general, and maybe even Azure in specific. I'm going to take one of our first questions and now port that to cloud, or in this case, Azure. What do you think, disregarding AI for now, what was the biggest thing in cloud the last 5 years? Or maybe what do you think is the best upcoming thing in Azure right now?
Oh, that's a very good question. I can't really think of the really next best thing here.
Well, then maybe the thing that surprised you most, and I'm going to give a little bit of an example. So, we have container apps or container instances even, which are totally one-offs, just running by themselves, fine. And then all the way on the other end of the spectrum, we have AKS with full Kubernetes under, with everything that you need to do there. And then there's a couple of things in between, right? So then container apps came out where you no longer have access to the Kubernetes API, but it does give you the strength of Kubernetes without a lot of the management. Now Azure is adding AKS automatic. Sorry. Now Azure is adding AKS automatic, which is actually something that's Kubernetes, but already pre-configured to be production ready. So it adds a lot of security and that kind of stuff. And you can really see services dropping in between existing services to have a better population across the board for those specific types of services. So for me, something like adding container apps and then adding AKS automatic, so that the complete spectrum of services that you can choose from when running applications in containers or even Kubernetes-like services, that's something that's really maturing right now. And I actually think that's a really powerful addition to the platform. So that was for me one of the services, or actually 2 of the services that had quite some impact. So based on that, did that help?
Well, yeah, a bit, but then you kind of stole my example there.
Crap.
But also, I think it's great. I love container apps. I love container instances somewhat less, because I'm running into a couple of issues there with a client running them in production. But it's a totally different story. But sometimes it also makes it harder for customers to choose, or for teams to choose, because in the beginning it was easier. Then either you did full-blown orchestration using Kubernetes, or you did some one-off Docker container somewhere else. Now we get all these services in between, and it makes it really hard to choose for those teams to, because it's really a fundamental choice usually. And of course it's running on containers, and it's always very easy to migrate, but in practice it's hard. So that, yeah, I love that they're adding stuff, but it does not always make it easier.
Yeah, I think coming in now, it's of course you have choice, and I like the choice. I think the AKS automatic maybe also getting into like a sweet spot of control versus like more control versus good practice. While container apps is just what you need, I think, in a lot of cases. I think container apps basically made containers in web apps basically unneeded. Even though that's also an option. I don't see any extra benefit in there, except for maybe I already was there and this is now easier. But like the deployment model is different. So
I've always done it this way.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? If you go invest somewhere with your team and you go in, even though you can change once you have like 5 resources in the similar setup. You don't want to just change, because then basically you have like multiple versions of your deployment pipeline, maybe even a different way of looking at it. Because if you look at the more push model versus maybe what you would orchestrate in Kubernetes yourself, like doing your whole CD there, is different. Once you're in there, like it's as hard to switch as from VMs to web apps, or you need to reinvest. And I think it's a difficult choice, especially the easy modes. I wouldn't know why you use instances over container apps in most cases.
For instance, for rapid scaling of dude.
You said, for instance, sorry, cannot hold that back.
So you can even use container instances, for instance, to automatically scale your Kubernetes environment. So you don't want to maybe buy that big bulky VM in case you just need 100 instances of all of the different pods that you have, but scale them using container instances so that you have relatively low base cost and then only higher cost when you need that. Or you could have container instances run, I don't know, crunching numbers on some data that you're putting in. You just fire them up, they take the data in, they crunch what they need to do, and they die off. So
yeah, maybe they're the simplest form indeed.
Yeah.
But like I'm afraid for and containers was always this issue for too many choices there, and there are also some like non Azure versions, right? Some open standards which also wrap around Kubernetes, or it's so much.
I think Red Hat OpenShift is one of the examples. That's yet another evolution, right?
And if you're running that somewhere else and you come in, it's great, of course, that you have that as a landing spot.
Yeah.
But it's hard to advise there.
I think it all boils down to we're evolving and we're growing and we're going to see what works and what doesn't, and then automatically those services that do work will progress.
Yeah, I think so, and I like the nuanced services. Like I loved when static web apps came out, and you so but it fills in a gap. It made something simple. It's really made for a case. It's cheap, basically, and that's the nice thing about cloud always, right? It's the best service for you as a budget and performance, and is most of the time also the best service for the cloud to host, to make it small, make it scalable.
And optimize usage of hardware.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we're going, right?
The density they seek is also good for you as a spend. So I think that's very different, because we used to sell licenses by the amount of cores you used and stuff like that, which were really push us the wrong way for a long time and make us spend money on stupid places and compute even.
Yeah, true. Roelant, is there anything that you would like to get back to, or anything that you would like to add to what we've already discussed today?
Not really sure. No, I don't think so. No, it was great fun.
Well, thanks so much for being our guest. We had a lot of fun, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you for listening to Beta Talks, the podcast. Beta Talks is made possible by BetaBit Managed Software Development.
See you next time.
Bye.